Mm.
Welcome back to Passing Time with Craig. As always, I'm your host, Craig, and today I'm joined by the artistic director of Vertigo Theatre, Jack Grinhaus. We're going to talk about, working in theater for years, working here in Calgary, what the theater scene's like, how they go about choosing what plays will be in the season, and of course, this newest one happening right now on until February 15th. It's Monstress, written by Trevor Schmidt. So we recorded this full disclosure before the play was released. I have since gone to the opening night of it. I was honored to be able to go to it and check it out. And let me tell you, it is fantastic. I had a blast. I went with my buddy Brad. And yeah, we absolutely enjoyed it. It was so good. Such an interesting take on such a classic story. Our two only performers in it are fantastic and amazing. The sets are incredible. The sounds. I loved it. So if you have the chance, you should definitely check out Monstrous. Tickets are available now and it runs till February 15th at Vertigo Theatre. But right now, let's jump into my conversation with Jack Grinhaus, the artistic director of Vertigo Theatre. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Jack. You're very busy always. Before we get into the current show and talk about this season of Vertigo Theatre, I wanted to talk to you about kind of your past. And I was looking you up, doing some research about you. You've done a little bit of everything. What draws you to theater? When was the first time that you really wanted to do theater? And going back and forth between film, television, productions, stuff like that. And then what is it about theater that's your first love?
So it's interesting. There's multiple layers because I've even begun to sort of get philosophical and historical with that and think about what my upbringing made me who I am in some ways. Like, without casting aspersions on family, I grew up with parents who weren't great at emotional connection. They were amazing, but I was a very sensitive child who didn't have the ability to release. It was kind of like if I had an emotional release, it was like, stop it, don't do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And again, I love my parents, but I think they came from a generation of survivors who also just lost the ability to have those connections. And so, I think automatically I needed an outlet for my emotion. And it felt like when I gained access to artistic endeavors that people were like that as well. And we all were much more able to be what we felt as personable, emotional in a way. And it dropped. So I was drawn in just character of me. But also, and this is cliche, the first play I ever went to was The Mousetrap at the Toronto Truck Theatre in Toronto.
Yeah.
I was 6 years old. And when that big ending happens, I won't do spoiler alerts, but when the big ending happens, it's quite a shock and everybody jumps in their seat. And I just remember that feeling of being jolted physically in a space with people, while also being so amazed at these giants in front of me on the stage. They seemed like giants, right? And the kind of charisma and authenticity and reality in this kind of theatrical environment. And so I think from a very young age, I knew I wanted to be an actor, and I was for about 25 years. I worked in New York. I worked in Toronto. I trained a lot. I loved training. I felt like craftsmanship was just really important to me early on, even at the risk of getting behind in the business game. I kind of sacrificed some of that time because I just wanted to just be really damn good at what I did, But by the time I got back from New York to Toronto and, acting, you have to wait for other people in a way to give you the opportunity or the right opportunity to come.
Yeah.
I was certainly getting some TV, theater, etc. But I just felt like I wanted more control over things and I had bigger stories to tell and wanted to be a director, and eventually over time, it was like, okay, as an actor, I felt like I was sort of a beautiful paint color on a painting.
Mm-hmm.
As a director, I felt like, oh, I'm the guy holding the brush. But as an artistic director, I felt like I could curate the gallery. There's an opportunity to just look at all of the art and provide all these opportunities for artists that you love. And also to be able to do whatever I want to do artistically, right? As an artistic director, you have that benefit. It's a great privilege, right? To direct whatever I want or if I want to act in something. So it was always like that. I came up from the indie scene. I came up climbing every rung of a ladder. Like there was no no cheat marks for me. I didn't have any, connections early or nepotism that worked for me. I didn't come from like a family with great wealth that could insert me, or a connected family. Again, not against any people who did that,
Yeah.
you know. So it's just that I had to kind of climb up. And so learning, as you said, learn everything at some point, and that helps when you're an artistic director. And I know that's probably a way long-winded answer. That you got me going. You got me going. So.
I like it. I like it. Well, I mean, so you touched on something, and what is it? Because I know and it doesn't matter what kind of career you're in, but there are people who just love that kind of like training and learning aspect, and kind of doing something that you're like, I want to learn this. It might only add a couple skills, but it's gonna be something. What is it about like learning and developing a new skill that you really enjoy?
Well, I call myself an incurable explorer.
Okay.
Sort of something I just made up for myself a few years ago.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's like I don't know if it's just the sort of, kind of guy I am, where I'm a little more frenetic and I just have a need to move on and learn new things. But I do think that, maybe my obsession with history and what that means, like the history of Canadian theater, the history of me, right? The history of the people around me, and trying to figure out where I fit in this puzzle and better understand what I do. But for me, it's just an obsession to want to know more, and again, everybody wants different things and learns different things. And I know some people who kind of hit a stride and they're like, this is good. I'm happy with what I have. And that's great. I'm impatient in that way. And I think that it has come to a real fortune for me to be in a theater where I can go into any department and have a legitimate conversation. Like I mop floors on stages. I was a front of house manager that someone puked on drunk one night.
Oh.
I was a bartender, I was a technical director. I hung lights. I burned my hands on lights. I know how hot they are. I've kind of, so I can go and speak to almost every department in my theater and actually understand and empathize, because I was like, yeah, I've done that job. And, but also keep them to a standard to go, well, I've done that job. You can do better.
Yeah.
Like there's also the ability to inspire and push a little bit, which I do to myself. And maybe that's the people who I work with. I tend to try to inspire to do what you said, which is to try to learn more and challenge. I try to give my artists challenging things to do, like when I bring directors to Vertigo, I'm not bringing them in to do something that's very standard and easy. I wouldn't ask them to come do that. They have such experience and talents. So if I bring them, I go, I'm bringing you, not only because I want to hang out with you because I haven't seen you for a year, but really because you bring something here, and I think there's something you may want to explore in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of challenges, I wanted to ask you, as someone who's acted, directed, and you're the artistic director, do you find what would be more challenging attacking a play? Would it be doing one of the most well-known plays of all time, let's say a Shakespeare play that everybody knows and loves, so you really have to make it your own, or starting from scratch this brand new play that is not, maybe one other city's done it, nobody's really knows the story and stuff like that? Is there one that's easier than the other? Because both are kind of daunting tasks.
Easier. I mean, that again speaks to your own skill sets. I think that there are some people who come to classical theater with a ton of classical directing, acting experience, and so that would be easier for them probably to take on a classical piece, and maybe the challenge for them would then try to take on a modern piece, and then vice versa. You may have people who work with a lot of modern theater. Robert Lepage, who I was very lucky to have spent some time working with. He's this incredible creative director that works in a way of just bringing ideas together in a room and starting to form them almost like literally on a board, and we'll move scenes around, try to figure out what it is. And, when they ask him, what is the meaning of this play? He said, well, it's not finished. When it's finished, the meaning will present itself.
Yeah.
When it starts from, but then also goes to Stratford and will direct a classical piece. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I would expect that. And he has work, he developed his own one person Hamlet years ago, and he has deep understanding of classical history, but he comes from a much more creative experience where he works on his own with his own team. If you go to Stratford, you have a very different model. You have to work under a particular rehearsal schedule, timeline, hundreds of people involved. And so where the background challenges other than the foreground, I think staging the play is not everything a director does.
Right.
That's the thing. There is a managerial reality and a business side of it, which is why you always feel like you're kind of mom or dad in the room. You know, you when you're an actor, you could all play around like you're the kids in the room, and suddenly you feel like, oh, I'm management now. You know, like I have to tell them what time to go to bed to shut off the light.
Yeah.
I don't want to, so you lose some of that. There's a level of camaraderie between director and actor that gets a little bit muddy. But, going back to your question again, all of those things factor into what makes a product easier to engage with, whether it be modern. I think the good directors I know approach every play with the same approach. They have a system they work by, and then they just let the play influence and tell it, because at the end of the day, that's what we want to do, is interpret the play, but interpret it in the way we know the writer would have loved if we do take it offline, Right. So I think that's part of it too, is finding the vision and the world, and then being able to send that world to your team in a way that makes sense to everybody.
Right.
It's really important that you really win that room early,
Yeah.
And so good directors are thinking of a lot of things other than whether the play itself might be easy or hard.
And so what is the artistic director at a theater company thinking of outside of that? Like what are some of the roles, some of the thoughts you're dealing with all the time?
10 years from now, right? Like
Mhm.
I have to live 10 years from now as much as I live today as an artistic director. I have to think about the strategic plan that not just myself, but my business partner, my team, and my board have all come together to want to put together. We have a strategic plan strategy, and it's a real one, and it's in congruous with both their perspectives and ours. My job is to lead the artistic vision of that aim, right? But that still has to be in line with other things. I could say, I want to have a $10 million season next year, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be the biggest theater you've ever seen in your life, and my board's going to go, well, there's no money for that.
Cool, but no.
And that's what they say. They're like, cool, but maybe 10 years from now, right?
Yeah.
So then when you realize that, then you literally do that. You're like, oh, okay, so I'll set that to 10 years. Now I have to work backwards. What do I need to do today to get to? So it's the same as what we teach actors when it comes to objectives, right? We say that in a play, every actor has a super objective. It's the big thing you want to get at the end of the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, you want to give something that's insurmountable if you really want a good acting performance to an actor, because if they say this is my ultimate goal and they get it halfway through the play, for example, what are they going to do for the rest of the play? They got nothing to do,
right?
Nothing to drive them. So you almost want to create a super objective that is impossible, right?
Yeah.
And then you set the mini objectives along the way. So in a scene, if I want to get something at the end of the play, I have to do something in the scene that's going to get me towards that thing.
Yeah.
And that's how actors prepare. So I think it's the same thing as an artistic director. You set huge long-term strategies and goals, dreams, of things that may not even exist yet, like I had a dream for a huge AR experience where people come in with those sunglasses and it's like a whole world on stage. And I talked to a bunch of technicians in AR. They're like, dude, that's not ready yet. It's like, we don't have, because I was like, can't we just do that? And they're like, no, the technology is not there. They're like, we get it. And, we'd love to do that. And everyone talks about those kind of things, but it's not there.
Yeah.
So, so I think the artistic director is to dream big and then find a way to bring community and audience and supporters and brand and recognition and connection to history, to the national theater scene, to the international scene, to the local scene. I like to build a theme into all my seasons, so all the plays tie together, so that you don't come with one sort of thing. If you came and saw 3 plays a year, you'd be like, oh, I get it. They all kind of,
because this season is redemption, right? Yeah.
A chance to right old wrongs, right? It's a chance to and I also tie the themes into what we are doing in the real world. So, to me, we came out of this pandemic in a bit of a shock. And in my first season, it was a lot about like my theme was around that kind of just stunned shock, right? And the whole season was like that. Then the next season, it was like, okay, we're coming out of it in some depressive mania state, and now we're in this kind of raging state, right? Like right now, this is all like I understand everything that's going on in the universe, and a lot of it I feel is still our reaction to a pandemic. Remember, nobody dealt with the anxiety of that pandemic. We can pretend like everything just moved on, and we all did.
Yeah.
But that kind of thing actually creates a traumatic experience, and I think we're going through the levels of grief, and we're in a rage phase right now. Like the world's just angry at everything.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Actually, I 100% agree with you.
And I'm hopeful that we're going to be coming out of that phase, and now we're in this redemptive phase, which is this season. This idea of, okay, we're coming out of this now, thinking about how we just were in this experience. What do we do? So every play this season has a character who's used some sort of past or reflection to solve the mystery of whatever the story is.
Right. And is it tough to narrow down the plays for that season sometimes? Is there a clear, like, no, we got to do this. This makes perfect sense. Or sometimes you're like, okay, we've seen a couple of these plays that can connect and be part of this theming for the season. What do we have? And we're trying to find, what's the hardest part is narrowing it down.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Jenga sometimes, for sure.
Yeah.
It's like you can set up a really perfect idea. And then when you start running the numbers and the details and the timing and whether it's available, I mean, there's all kinds of things that stand in the way of potentially putting up a play. I think that you come in with a framework. That's why having a theme helps me, because it does automatically narrow down, because I mean, if you just said you can do anything you want, I think that's actually that's like deer in headlights. Like you freeze,
It's too much. It's too much.
It's too much. It's almost too much option. It's like somebody said, like, what's your favorite song from 1991? You're like, it's like, it's Frozen, right? You said, well, so I think giving it that theme helps, right? And the theme is always, to me, reflecting, like I said, what's happening. As in the zeitgeist, what's the earth saying? Not just that, me kind of trying to predict what next year's zeitgeist will be based on that. That's part of the whole history and understanding thing, right? So I'm trying to crystal ball human nature and reality and reaction a year in advance, right? Yeah. Hoping I'm kind of in the right spot, right? And then create a theme, because if it's right, the audience will have some intrinsic reactions that they don't really know about. And that's fine. I don't care. It's like, I'm not trying to hypnotize anybody, but I think there'll just be a level of, like just one extra layer that isn't in the foreground of the brain.
Yeah.
But it's like we relate. It's a relatability.
Yeah.
And I think that every play this season has that character who is trying to find that redemption for something they mayn't have loved about the past or learned from the past.
And one of the other things about Vertigo Theatre, the theater is very much about intrigue and mystery. Why do you think audiences, I know I love mysteries, I love all that stuff. Why do you think these types of plays are so enjoyed by audience members, and why people want to come and watch them? Is it because we all have mysteries in life and we want some answers?
We humans, we love human nature. We love the conversation around human nature, like how do we behave? But more importantly, when you get to the mystery, you get to the crime genre, we watch people who, you and me might step on an ant, and then this one guy kill somebody in the same way. Like there's no, but we watch that in kind of shock.
Yeah.
And I think there's this kind of trying to understand human nature in a way that, and in some ways a little bit impressed by it, the way that we do fall for those criminals in ways.
Yeah.
Right. But also I think audiences like to come to theater to feel smart. They do. I think a lot of theater in a lot of places over a lot of history times has turned audiences away because they try to be too smart and they make the audiences feel stupid.
Right.
And I actually heard that from somebody. I was arguing with somebody once about, because he was saying theater's this, and I just finally got out of him. He said, I hate theater because every time I leave, I walk out feeling stupid because I didn't get it.
Oh,
Right. And I realized in that moment, that's not my job.
yeah.
Like, Lauren, my partner, my wife, and I, we had a company, an indie company in Toronto called Bound to Create, and everything was about being bound to create. We had no choice. We were, it was, and because of our nature, we were bound to create. We were going to do it no matter what, and so we created our own work, and we try to push buttons, and a lot of time we try to have visceral reactions from people. We literally, at some point in our early goings, had a little like clock timer of how many people walked out. And if it was like less than 10, we were like, damn it, like we wanted to really push people. See, and we were pushing ourselves at the same time, right? We were pushing our own understandings of what that line and limitation is. That's why Vertigo is a really nice fit for me, because I've always worked in that kind of pushing that sense of ugliness and truth and violence and criminality. That's a lot of the work I've done over the years. So coming to Vertigo, it's like, oh, I know where this line is now, where I want it to be for now, right? Like every artistic director comes in with a certain idea, looking at the history of Vertigo, you can see what each artistic director brought to the organization, moving it forward, because it's this continuous motion, and adding to it. And it's just been, legacy after legacy for each person. As I dig into the history, you go, wow, this guy, I can't believe it. Like we started with only Agatha Christie, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly the next AD was like one Sherlock. Boom. Revolutionary, right?
Yeah. And Vertigo Theatre has been around for a long time, and a lot of different shows. Is there a show from your artistic director time the past few years that you're the most proud of, or is it like picking your kids? I mean, everybody's got their favorite kid, let's face it.
Well, I mean, there's like two or three for sure that I mean, there's so many, they're so good, and the artists we have are so great. We're so fortunate.
Yeah.
The three that, when you ask that question, just pop in my mind, and that's why I'll mention them.
Yeah.
Is, I would say, The Girl on the Train.
Oh, yes.
As particularly as a director and an opportunity to work with that group of people, and to unwrap that story. I loved the book so much.
It was such a great book. I loved that book.
I mean, the movie was fine. It was good. Just because I like the story, I like the movie, but I kind of just wanted to find my own way into the story a little bit differently, and had such a great group to work with. So I love that one. For me as a director too, to be involved. The Brothers Paranormal this fall. I mean, it's just an extraordinary piece of theater, and the first show, I think, in the history of Vertigo that has 100% approval, like not one negative comment.
Wow, that's amazing.
Online or otherwise, right?
Yeah.
And then I'd say the Jekyll and Hyde we did.
Oh yeah.
Javier Villalta directed that. Him and I bonded almost instantly when I saw some of his work. It was the first show that I programmed myself, for my first season, right? Incredible writer, Nick Lane, giving North American premiere of it. The production was just unbelievable, really set the tone. I would say those three plays also set the tone for the kind of Vertigo I want the theater to be. Mm-hmm. I believe in moral ambiguity more. I believe in characters who are complex and difficult to understand. The danger of early mystery is that the characters are very stereotypically tropes. They're just tropes.
Yeah.
It's like the hero, the villain, the damsel in distress, and it doesn't allow for a lot of depth and flexibility for either the actor or director, right? It stays at its surface. It's not to say you can't, which is why you're seeing adaptations. People are trying to kind of, even if they can work with the writing, they can deepen it.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of complex people. I like that, one of the reviewers didn't like Girl on the Train because she didn't like any of the characters. And I went, I can live with that.
Yeah.
Like that. I'm sorry you didn't like the play because you didn't like the characters, but the characters in Girl on the Train, when you meet them, are at their absolute lowest. Okay. They're at their absolute worst in life. And you know what? They're not going to be nice. They're not going to be smiling about it. They're not going to be comical about it. Like they're in the gutter. So we have to acknowledge that and see how they come out of that. And even at the end, if they come out of it and they're not great people, but they've come out of it, that's you and me. You know what I mean? That's just, we've all been there for real. And I believe people are more engaged when they are more engaged. That's all. I think if you can pull people in further, and I think horror plays are great that's what Brothers Paranormal was so great. The horror was there, but you cared about the characters and it made it scarier.
Yeah.
So the horror gets deeper. Slashers, nobody cares about the people. They just want to see people chopped up,
Yeah.
But a good horror movie will draw you into the people so you fear for their safety, which makes your fear get greater. So as a horror buff, that's, I know, and I love that stuff. So that's another.
And I love horror, and I agree with you. And I mean, I've chatted with friends over the years who also love those types of like movies and plays and TV shows, and movies in particular. There's been so many movies that they've just been about the kills. So you don't care about the characters. And it depends on what type of film it is too. Like, there's a reason why we love Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees, is because the victims are nobody we care about, especially the later movies. So it's just, we're rooting for the villains, but we have fun with them. But if you have characters, and people want either a character they love or love to hate, and those characters that are just kind of stuck in the middle are just, people aren't really enjoying that.
Yeah, I mean, and you're hitting on something, right? And I don't think that, I would never profess that, I haven't missed the mark a few times myself in my career. There's no doubt that, I aimed for something and it just missed the mark for whatever reason, and that's not necessarily that anything in the work was bad, right? Yeah. Sometimes you do a brilliant job of just not connecting. Yeah. And it's exactly that thing. Maybe that's an error I actually have made, where maybe that moral ambiguity I aim for puts that person in the center place where people are like, and you're right, that's possible that I've done that. It's hard to recognize sometimes from the inside when you've been working on it so deeply, Yeah. That's part of the reason I like having an assistant director with me a lot, especially one who only can come in once in a while. That's even better, because if they pop in like a week later and they're like, oh my God, all this changed, and so I can really be like, what are you seeing that's different? And then I can hear whether it's, because it's, I have to always look at the play as if I'd never seen it, which is how I try to direct plays. I tell my actors all the time, I'm going to be in the audience and I'm just going to ask questions of things I just don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, somebody gets up and walks across and sits down. I go, why'd you do that? It's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, then go back. If you don't have a reason, you don't have a reason to just get up and walk across to the other side. It looked like it was just random. And he's like, oh, it was. I'm like, well, then go back to the other side.
Yeah.
And if you need to come over for a reason, come over. But if you're just doing it because you're just antsy in your spot, well, that's every time somebody moves on stage, the eyes immediately go to that movement. That's why cameras create movement in film and TV, but on stage, the bodies are what, and the light, I suppose, can combine in a way, or separately they can create movement. And the set, I suppose. I mean, I suppose everything, even sound, could create movement.
Yeah.
But effectively, when a body moves, the eyes are going to go there. So, yeah, it's just that kind of thing.
So let's chat about Monstress, the new one out, written by Trevor Schmidt. What drew you to this play? And what can you tell us about it? Obviously, we want people to go watch it, but what can you tell people and what drew you to it?
So, I mean, there's the internal and external, right? So I've known of Trevor's work for a long time. I've known of the company for a long time. A lot of my career has been around building relationships with people. And I always get concerned with there's somebody in the industry that I didn't know, right? Or that I'll meet someone and be like, how the hell in 30 years have you and I not crossed paths? And they'd be like, yeah, I heard about you. And I'm like, yeah, of course I heard about you.
Yeah.
But so there are a lot of people in this industry that it's a pleasure. And I've been so lucky that I've never been landlocked. Like, I've moved around a lot, worked in Toronto and Ontario for years, and in London and Ontario, then moved out to BC and ran a theater out in BC. So suddenly I was way out the other side.
Yeah.
Then came sort of more central here, in a way, and have had a chance to work in Winnipeg and in New Brunswick. Like, there's been opportunities that have given me a chance to take in the world, right? And so Trevor's work was one of the people's works that I've always known about, but I didn't get a chance to actually see or meet.
Yeah.
Right. And Northern Lights is a company I'd heard so much about, and they were going to their 50th. I was like, that'd be cool to give them a partnership on their 50th, something they can be cool with. And I just heard Monstress, and I went, okay. And I got in a car and I just drove out to Edmonton. And I got in there, and Trevor and I had lunch. I found Trevor to be very much in line artistically with the way I thought of things. I think we both come from an indie background, and so we understood each other's language very quickly. And I found him to just be really upfront, very authentic. And that was something I'm a big fan of. Like, even if you're not a great person, I'd rather you're just who you are. Like, I don't fake it.
Yeah.
Just be who you are. I'll respect you a lot more if you're just being who you are. And Trevor's just, it's all out there. So I knew right away I liked his work in the past. I knew about the company. I knew about him. I kind of knew I was going to go see something that would be good. I knew I wasn't going to something qualitatively weak. It would have been surprised, especially after you meet it. When you meet an artist, you can tell their talent by the way they speak, by the way they hold themselves, by the way they are. There's a level of understanding, But I went in, and right away I was struck the colors in this play. I know that he even discussed this idea of like a graphic novel or a comic book.
Yeah.
Just rich, deep colors made it so theatrical immediately and gothic. The look of it was fantastic. And then the performances just were really good. It was intriguing. Trevor does something in the writing where he implies dreadful things without having to say them.
Oh.
And there's something so incredibly powerful about that, because in the end, when you really think about what the horror of the story is, it's a bit horrifying and grotesque, but it's never actually said.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's no actually, it's, he'll give you one, and you have to figure out the plus and equals, and then you go, oh, yeah, right, or whatever, right? But it really fit in line with the kind of work that Vertigo is looking at. It is, and Frankenstein's back in the vogue.
I was gonna say, you've got Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein up for a bunch of awards all the time. People are talking about it. Even Wednesday on Netflix has that gothic look and vibe. It goes away for a little bit, but then it comes back, and people love that look and that feel and that story. It's something that we all can gravitate to, and it's because it looks different than what we have in our general. Like, people are walking on the streets of Calgary going to Vertigo Theatre, and then all of a sudden this gothic world.
Yeah, well, and again, there are themes in this story that I do find relevant to today, right? I mean, this idea of building Frankenstein monsters or playing God. We're seeing a lot of that in the political spectrums and on the social media spectrum, right? Like, we're seeing people not understanding birthing a monster they don't understand yet.
Yeah.
So again, I was immediately struck with that. And again, that's what I was feeling was happening in the universe. So I didn't know about Guillermo's movie or this, that's probably just great coincidence, or like you said, there's just something in the air where people are feeling like there's a lot of monsters in the world right now, and we've built a lot of them.
Yeah.
And we're unleashing more every day. And it's, I think there's something question around like what's morally right, are the right or the left or the set, like what's going on. So Monstress fits into that, but artistically it's beautiful. It bringing it to the slot we have, it is a great slot, because this is the third slot of the year, tends to be one where we know we can take some chances. It's the dark of winter. It's ugly. Sometimes a lot of our senior or seasoned patrons are snowbirding, so we have a lot of young people come out in this slot. Right? Young people don't want to sit at home, but it's too cold to do something outside.
Yep.
They're looking for a thing to do, and I'm talking, we really draw in the 25 to 40 crowd. People are just settling in to job and life.
Yeah.
Right. And have a little bit of expendable money, either right before kids, or kids have just gotten a little old enough to be babysat or on their own. And so I think about them, and how do we make sure something every year makes them feel like, oh, this is very present, very now, because of the modern energy of the storytelling, right? And sometimes the grotesque violence in its being implied, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so it made it very easy to make the decision to be honest. I had a quick call with Trevor about a year ago, which would have been a few months after I'd seen it, and said, hey, I really like this. Do you think you could reboot your team and bring him out? Because I kind of love the team and I love the design. I didn't want to we could do one from scratch. I could have just bought the script.
Yeah.
Like that's an offer. I could have called Trevor and said, hey, I'd love to do Monstress. Can I just have your script? And then we'd get a director, we get a team, put it together. But I liked that production. I like those artists. I wanted to give them that partnership. That Alberta connection was great.
Yeah.
I like building those provincial relationships again, as much as municipal and national. It's important to remember so it's nice to promote another Alberta playwright and play.
Yeah.
And artists, some of these artists haven't been on these stages working in this size of stage, which is fantastic. What an honor to be there.
I was going to ask you about our two leads. Like, what is their performances chemistry like on stage? Like, what can an audience expect from because it's very much a story of these two characters, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to know what can audience expect from their chemistry and their performances?
Well, it's a good question. Tonight is actually the first night I'm watching this version. We're doing our dress tonight.
Oh, nice.
So I can't yet answer what it does in my room.
Yeah.
But when I was there in that space, they drew me right in. It's a very intimate piece. I'm hoping that they can retain that sense of drawing people in, even if they're at a greater distance from their audience. Mm-hmm. I felt from watching the show that it would succeed in a larger space. There wasn't a sense that this is a small show for a small theater. Yeah. Right. This was a sense that this is a kind of small theater trying to punch up a big show, but being constrained with what they had. It was really funny the other day. The lighting designer was walking around the stage, or maybe it was in a production meeting where we were talking about lighting, and we were like, do you want this? Do you want this? She's like, it's funny. I went from 16 lights to about 160 lights. She's like, I don't really have all the answers for everything just yet. And we said, of course, sure. But it was funny, right? Because we didn't even, it's so for her, what a pleasure to come in and say, hey, can I just get a light that glows just on that thing? Yeah. We're like, yeah, of course. You could have like 10 of lights to focus on, So the advantage to give these artists a chance to build on that chemistry you're talking about, alchemy, that performance, I feel like they had a really great chemistry when they were there. This is a year later. So it's not that gets forgotten. It gets deeper, like you don't forget the camaraderie of working together that intensely ever in your life. Like you'll always see that, I don't want to compare it to like Army War guys, but like you'll see somebody across the hall, they've been through that. Yeah. They've been booed off the stage. They've been laughed at. They've been cheered to no end, right? They played to one person. They played to 1,000 people, right? They grinded, 8 shows out a week, right? Through flus, through COVID, through twisted ankles, through, broken ribs, like everything. And they do it because it's so rare to get to do. So I think every actor who gets on a stage, at least the ones that don't necessarily start acting or feeling spoiled in a way, which aren't so many, but there are some. Yeah. But majority of actors, they know, man, I got like 3 or 4 or 5 weeks to do this. Mm-hmm. Every night is going to be a joy because it could be another 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, 6 months, Yeah. So I have high expectations and only because I know they'll achieve those expectations because of the work I'd seen already. But after this weekend, I'll know for sure.
Yeah. So as we start to wrap up here, I wanted to talk about and bring up, you mentioned being New York, Toronto, BC, you've been all over. And I think sometimes people forget about Calgary's theater scene because we have so many different theaters, productions, from the very small community to major ones like yourself. What do you want people to know about the Calgary theater scene?
I mean, it's a phenomenal community. It's probably the strongest theater community, I think, right now, to be honest. And, because I listen, Toronto is always going to be a hub. It's always going to be a center point. But Toronto's still just Toronto. And when I got back from New York, I was like, oh, Toronto's just another city here in Canada. Yeah. Right. I don't think, like, if you want to be the biggest star in the world, you have to go to New York or LA kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that makes that like that there. But you don't just go to Toronto and suddenly you're this huge thing all over the country. You're not. You work in Toronto.
Yeah.
And you're a Toronto theater artist, and hopefully it brings you some contacts to other places, because people do come in from all over to watch work from there, of course. But most of the Toronto actors I know have only and always work in Toronto, or maybe within the region, not even external Ontario, just a couple of the little ones nearby.
Yeah.
And so every community is strong in its own way. I've seen plays in Calgary that are stronger than New York, and I've seen work all over this country. And so there's talent everywhere. Calgary, though, what's amazing is the art is centralized. We have this incredible center, in Toronto, there's like 6 or 7 different areas of theater, right? And then pockets all over the place, of course, but there's sort of zones, right? And to travel from one zone to another is quite time consuming.
Yeah.
And while Calgary does have some spaces around the city that are a little bit outside that core or within, we have this incredible box going on here.
Yeah.
The Workland Center and what we have at Vertigo sort of combined is about like 95% of the theater going on in downtown Calgary.
Yeah.
Right. And probably 95% of the professional theater that goes on in Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I said, there are theaters a little outside that, but that's incredible for when people come down and they want to relate to a space, especially after this construction there. Like when they rebuild that space, it's going to be such a draw.
Oh yeah.
We're looking at what that Aspen, and who's our lease, we're all looking at what the tower and that space is looking like in the future, and how do things fit in there. And I think there's a maturity of artists in the city, and a talent pool that unfortunately doesn't trust itself enough. Doesn't in some ways know how worthy they all are, and how great they all are, and how challenging it is to find something for everybody.
Yeah.
I know that when I audition 24 people for 3 roles, 21 people are going to hate me.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry about that. Like, I can't do anything about that. I can only hope that other 21 come the next year, and maybe there's 3 of them. And it just, you hope that over time you can get through everybody as often as you can.
Yeah.
We're trying our best, which we hire. Most of our companies are local. I would say we flex in the 90 to 95% of our companies, maybe on the odd year something changes, but overall we try to hire all the local artists, not because it's financially good or it looks good, like actually because they've got the talent to do the work, and I'm now picking plays for them.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm thinking about who's here and who could play those roles. And I didn't know that before, but I want to be able to provide. So I go, you know what, this person would be great in this play. So that's part of that process too.
And, we've chatted about this on the podcast before. I've said it so many times. Forming those connections with people, networking. I mean, how many times do you hear stories of people who they're like, this is not for you, this role, but I loved what you did in your audition. I'm going to keep you in mind. And sure enough, that play comes along and you're like, holy crap, I know the person who is this character. I know who it can be. And they come back and they do that audition for you and they get this play. And it might have been 6 months down the line. It might have been a year down the line. But like forming those connections, whether you think you're right for this role or not, but giving it your all in your audition, your interview with someone, whatever it may be, if you form a good enough connection, it's going to pay it off eventually.
You have to be completely relentless in this business. And everybody has an angle of how they play the game and how they do the business, right? I mean, everyone has an angle. And people pretending they're not playing the game, that's still playing the game.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, they can say they're the anti whatever. There is a faction of the community that is that. They're still part of it.
Yeah.
Right. I tried myself too. Right. And I forcibly extricated. I purposely tried to get my way back in. You can do what you want, but you're still part of that community. And if anybody who survives a certain length of time understands the business of the work, you can delude yourself for years on end. You can drug yourself and drink yourself for years on end. You can pretend in your head, whatever you need to mentally stay stable, but you have to just continue to work in this industry. And you have to understand that there is a level of nepotism that exists that automates a certain level of connection early, right? So you just got to know when you're behind the 8 ball on it, that's all. And you just chase harder. You just work harder, right? Force yourself to be seen. Get yourself seen. Get yourself known, right? Don't be stalkery. Don't be mean. Don't. And here's a half swear, not really, but just don't screw anybody over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, people do it all the time, right? But it is not forgotten.
Yeah.
It is not forgotten. Some people do it their whole careers. They get away with it. No one cares, but people know. And for me, my business anchor, for me, that I hope at least, is integrity. That's it. Like, it's the only thing you can't take from me. You can't take my integrity. You can take everything you want. Can't take my integrity. Only I can screw that up.
Yeah.
Right. And if I have in any way, it's never been intentional. And I've always tried to bounce back from that in a better way. I'm not a perfect human being. I've made mistakes, and the mistakes you make are why you end up who you are. But in our industry, you have to fight harder than anywhere else, because you have to go in every day, accept a certain level of rejection or control or compromise, and move on with it. Right. And get on to the next one. Like, Sam Beckett's quote, ever tried, ever failed, try again, fail better. Right.
Yeah.
So just like fail better, just do what you can, but just stay with it. Don't compare yourself to other people. That's death, because you don't know why somebody got the thing they got. And just breeds a lot of resentment and anger. And we all go through that as actors. We go through that as directors. People write something in the press and you're like, I worked on this for 2 years, and you in one night with a stupid typewriter and about 10 minutes time, without any real deep thought, just quick in thought of what you felt in the moment, based on your own prejudice about what you like.
Yeah.
And based on the kind of clicks you like to get, you just decide to eviscerate a piece of me, with no regard whatsoever. Whatever, that's their job. That's fine. Right. I mean, but it does, that's why I just don't read anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I don't anymore, because whether it's good or bad, it's not good, because it's you just want your authentic relationship with your audience, and you hope that critics understand that part of their role is to promote the work. And the problem with a lot of Canadian criticism is it doesn't allow us to promote our work outside of Canada, because we're so hard on ourselves.
Right.
You don't get, like, in US, when they like something, they make it sound like it's the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it is or isn't.
Yeah.
Right. That's what the US does. That's why they're the best marketing machine on earth. They're not the best country in the world. They're the best marketing machine on earth. And we play this kind of humbleness to their boisterousness. Right. But it doesn't mean we can't also be proud of the things we're good at.
Yeah.
And push those things out.
Exactly. We got to be proud of ourselves. We've got such amazing stuff going on, and people often forget that. So I do want to ask you, as we wrap up here, what one word would you describe Monstress for? Like, what's the one word if people are listening and they're like, I think I want to get tickets? What are you going to say to them?
Exhilarating.
Ooh.
I think it's an exhilarating experience of theater, but it's hypnotic too, right? Like, it has this kind of combination of this sense of wonder you have, and it kind of draws you in. But the whole thing is, it's really cool.
Yeah.
I like cool theater, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I am so excited to see this play. I'm very, very stoked about it. I hope others go see it. I mean, again, we chatted about it. It's winter. People, I mean, as we're recording the spoiler alert, it doesn't feel like winter or look like winter, but for most of the run, probably there's going to be some crappy weather. So it's a nice way to get out of your house. And as we mentioned, downtown, Vertigo Theatre, you're so centralized location, and you're around all these great bars, pubs, and restaurants. If you want to have, like, who usually have happy hour right up until the playtime.
Yep. And listen, if you just walk around a few of them, there's some dinner meals based on if you have your theater tickets. They'll give you 10% off this, or they'll give you a free dessert. and no questions asked, right?
Yeah.
So they just say, you're going to the show, great, right? Because we try to support them too. I mean, there's no doubt that when we have our shows, that it's going to hopefully bump up some of their space as well. So that's part of what's great about what we all do too, is we're all just kind of building with each other
Yeah.
in a way. And so that's what's great about this community too. There's a lot of collaboration, and that makes it really unique. And people are there. If you want to do something new in Calgary, people back you doing it. You know what I mean? And some places you go, they're like, slow down, wait. And here they're like, yeah, well, sure, let's try it.
Yeah.
And I think that excites somebody like me, and excites people who come here and listen. We've had quite a number of people move here, about 100 or 150,000 in the last few years. Like, that's a lot. We're going to be hitting 2 million, not that far off.
No.
And this city is starting to prime itself to become a metropolitan size city. It already is, right? But it's starting to own it. So I'm excited, and I think the theater and arts community are a big part of that.
Yeah.
And we're all really happy to be around at these times.
Thank you, Jack Grinhaus, for coming on and chatting with me. You're a busy guy, so I appreciate you finding some time to chat with me. Monstress, if you haven't seen it yet, it is on till February 15th. Go ahead and do it. It's a great time. There's so much to check out in the theater scene, as we mentioned. But yeah, you go, make a night of it. Go check out some places beforehand for a bite to drink or a bite to eat. Grab a drink, and then head on over to Vertigo Theatre right downtown in the heart of Calgary. It's a fantastic play, and I'm looking forward to what else they got coming up the rest of the year. Always such great stuff. Make sure to follow me on social media at PTW Craig, Passing Time with Craig. Lots of fun stuff coming up in February here. The Alberta Indie Film Throwdown is back for a third edition. This one is all about comedies, romantic comedies, happening Valentine's Day at the Plaza Theatre from 2 to 5 p.m. Tickets are pay what you can, available on my Eventbrite, so go ahead and get some tickets. Otherwise, have a good one. We'll see you soon. Bye.